Andrew Davies. What do you know about improvisation? Improv. I was never a theater person, although I loved it. I did take a theater class in college and loved it. I never pursued it, but it just seems like it's a very different kind of discipline. But Andrew takes it to a whole new level. He introduces improv to businesses and to meetings and to team building. He is a theater person, went to school for theater in New York City. He's in the general Philadelphia area now. And interesting take on how he helps bringing people together. Natural question is, how about the introverts? How do you handle introverts? And loves working with introverts. The way he attacks the problem with his own twist is very, very interesting. He does this other thing called characters, where he goes on these tours as a character. He told me about this one recently where he's Larry Fine. So Larry's one of the Three Stooges, but just such a different perspective. I mean, he is dedicated to art, and how believes everybody has artistry in them, creativity in them, which I believe too, by the way. But it's just so refreshing to be in kind of Andrew's world and how he describes it. It's a wonderful place to be. And again, it's one of these remarkable people that not only love it and practice it, but show others how to do it. Really enjoy my conversation with Andrew. Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. I'd like to go. I'm really excited to talk to you. Andrew, how do you take on the task of introducing art to business?
Well, it's really, helping them, I think, unleash their own creativity that they already have and see the creativity on their team. So we call ourselves artly working, not hardly working, but artly working, because we feel that, everyone is really a creative, quote unquote. But a lot of times people are put into boxes and they don't see their role as having creativity or as needing creativity. And we think it's both. And so we're really trying to get people to see their own creativity, their own artistic skills and ideas, and really to see the value of their teams, of working together, collaborating, creating together.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza Dash MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. So what are some common stoppages? I mean, do you get to the boss or the manager says, look, I don't care about creativity. These people need to sell these widgets or whatever, does what gets in your way? What are the obstacles?
Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of it is really the meetings and how they set the tone for the organization. And if you're an organization and if your boss kind of shuts down ideas, questions, other ideas, you start to kind of turn off that problem solving side of your brain. So a lot of times when we're coming into teams, a lot of it is about we use improv and theater games not to make people into performers or, theater actors, but to really help them to learn to trust each other, to learn to trust their own ideas, to play
Hmm.
together. There's an idea from Seth Godin, who's an author that I love, about more bad ideas. And that's really important. And I think improv is the best way to practice having more bad ideas. And it's the only way you get to new, interesting ideas. So if you're not willing to sort of encourage your team to think outside the box, think of new things, have more bad ideas, you're never going to get to the great ideas. So
Hmm.
a lot of it is about really practicing that muscle. I often say, like, I'm not a weightlifter, I'm not a muscle guy, but for our creativity, improv is the best kind of weightlifting. It's building your creative muscles, building your idea generating muscles so that you become a team that is thinking creatively about how to send that email, about how to have that sales meeting, about how to do everything you do. Yeah.
Team building through improv.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody else who does that. It's revolutionary, Andrew.
Yeah, there's a small but merry band, I think, of us out there who are
Mm,
really seeing the value of improv in our lives. I studied improv in New York City at the Magnet Theater, and for me, it was revolutionary not only as a performer but as a person. So I was someone who really struggled with a lot of anger issues, a lot of getting angry, frustrated, that kind of
mm,
taking over my emotions. And improv really helped me to see opportunities where there weren't any before. In improv, we say everything is an offer. And what we mean by that is not that everything that happens is good, but everything is an offer, right? So if your day got canceled because some client canceled on you, it's not that you're happy that they canceled, but that is an offer, right? Maybe the offer is to go back and rethink what you were going to do in the first place, or the offer is to reconnect with that program you did last year that was amazing and look at it again. So the improv mindset, I really feel like if we all have an improv mindset, the world will be a better place, our companies will be a better place, our teams will be a better place, and our lives will be better.
hmm.
Yeah.
Define improv,
So
Andrew.
improv for me is really about being in the moment and creating things together. So improv is creating things that don't exist already. Improv comedy is really my training more than musical improv or improv jazz or things like that. But improv really is something that you're creating from scratch in the moment, and that really can't be done alone. That really is done in collaboration with others. And one of the important ideas too of improv is that we need to see the group's potential as more important than our own.
Hmm.
It's really a focus on what's best for the group. What does the group need? What does the team need? Rather than what do I need? So when we're doing an improv comedy show, we have a back line of performers and there's one or two people in a scene, but everyone on the back line is standing there thinking, what could help the scene? What could help
Hmm.
the story?
Hmm.
And in the same way on a team, we work with a lot of teams and we really encourage people to say, when someone else's project is going on or with a company's work, think, how can I help that work, right? Like how can we better what the company
Hmm.
is doing? And it's freeing because you focus less on yourself and you realize, like, how can we help the company's mission becomes how everyone succeeds, right? That everyone succeeds together. I really, found theater first in high school and sort of transitioned from being on all the sports teams. I was on the basketball team and the soccer team and the baseball team and loved that. And then I found at some point that the kind of competitive nature of it, where you have to win or lose and being up in the ninth inning or up for that
Mm.
last shot, I found stressful and not in a fun way. And it was always like a winner and a loser. And when I found theater in high school, I realized that what's different about art and the art mindset is that when you win by creating something, everybody wins, right? So when you see a great play, it's not that some other play lost, right? Everyone wins. And in the same way, if you let down the show, everyone is kind of losing together. So for me, the metaphor of sports is interesting for life, but the metaphor of putting on a play is actually more relevant to a company because when we win, we're all winning together.
Hmm.
And it gets you into a mindset of collaboration, of creation, rather than competition or taking people down.
Hmm. I, but perhaps I have this wrong, Andrew. But generally speaking, in schools and universities, we see that the theater I was about to say rats. That's not a really complimentary term, is it? But theater people generally aren't the ones that are also taking business classes. They seem to be opposing, although some theater people certainly could be athletes, but business seems to be kind of counter to that culture, and that really shouldn't be the case. You say there's more commonality than meets the eye.
Yeah, I think, all of us choose our paths. And obviously, not everyone is going to run a business and do a show and be a
Hmm.
musician and all those different things. But I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And so, my co founder, Dave, and I really feel that um, folks in business really have a lot to learn about building strong teams, collaborating, right? That's what you can really learn. It's not that I think I can design a better spreadsheet or a better quarterly report or, a better slide deck with all the right graphs than everyone at their own business. But what I do know from theater and from improv is how to build a really strong team, how to create things together, how to build trust with each other. One of the things we love to do is really work with organizations on onboarding. And onboarding new employees or new staff is so important because it sets the tone for their whole time at the organization. And a lot of companies, almost every company now has their stated values, right? But those values exist mostly on a page, on a website, not
Hmm.
necessarily in the actions or the behavior of their staff. So, what we do is we work with companies to bring their values into life, into action by
Hmm.
creating an improv workshop where we unpack each value through a game and through unpacking the game and playing together. So, when we say, if a company's value is
Integrity.
integrity, right? We talk about what does that actually look like? How do we actually show integrity, right? So we can do a game where we, each have to make up a product and then someone else has to sell it. And we have to make sure we stick to the, made up, reasoning that the other people
Hmm.
say. So we can kind of put it into action. So for me, it's really like bringing those values to life so that people feel connected to integrity in a personal way. And it's not just like, oh yeah, I know our company says integrity. Okay, back to my emails.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Very clever. And when you want to do these exercises with the introverts, what happens? How do you bring them out a little bit, Andrew?
Yeah, I love doing improv with introverts or people who feel like they're introverts because improv is really about listening and not about speaking
Hmm.
first and foremost. Because a lot of people I think comedy and improv and theater is about speaking, is about being a big personality and presenting. But actually what makes a great improviser is an incredible listener because you're making things up together. You have to be an amazing listener. So introverts can be amazing at that skill. And when I unlock that for them, saying, like, your role may be to silently stay there for the first 2 minutes, listen to everything, and then you're going to jump in with the perfect joke or with the perfect idea or the perfect character because you're such a good listener. So it's really, I think improv is for introverts, and introverts are
Hmm.
amazing. We work with a lot of tech companies and health tech organizations. And that's often the first thing they email us when we're planning is saying, just so you know, a lot of our team are data guys or tech
Hmm.
people, and they're
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
introverted. And we say, like, we got you, we work with you, we really create a safe space and build from a really simple game. We also just don't dive into the deep end, in the same way in anything you wouldn't tell people to, you know, just dive off the deep end, off the high, 50-foot diving board. We start in the shallow end, we get you comfortable, and we slowly move, further from there.
Is there a wrong way to do improv, Andrew?
Is there a wrong way to do improv? In a sense, there's like 1,000 wrong ways, but it's all about practicing and making things work. One of the ideas we have in improv is that there are no mistakes. That's kind of one of our mantras. And of course, we recognize that you can have mistakes, but the point of saying there are no mistakes is the idea that if you incorporate a mistake or incorporate a happenstance into a scene or into a moment, you can make it work, right? So if someone is doing a scene and they are a parent and child, and then the kid accidentally says, "Oh, like, honey, what should I get you for our anniversary?" Right? Now it could be a whole scene about how, oh, we've married our kid. Like if you
Hmm.
incorporate it, it could
Hmm.
become this strange, funnier story. If you don't say that was a mistake, but you have to incorporate it into the scene, right? We play a game where it's called like I Have a Secret, where we'll do a scene and everyone has a piece of paper in their pocket with secrets that people have written down. And in the middle of the scene, you have to just pull it out and read it and then make it work in the scene. So it might say, I'm turning into a dog, or it could say, I'm the president. And so now, whatever dynamic you have to kind of incorporate that. And so I think in the same way, in the business sense, we give people a sense of when mistakes happen, when things go wrong, that is an offer, right? When you've prepared a slide deck meticulously and you're going to present it, and then the tech isn't working, you could fight with the tech for half an hour until you finally get it to work. Or you could say, okay, this is an offer to me to say, I'm going to share really the core ideas of it. I'm not going to worry about what was on the slides, right?
Hmm.
And so that's what improv is really inviting you to think about is, okay, this tech being broken is really an offer, right? Maybe we can talk about it right now and I'll email you the slide deck later, that kind of thing.
I remember, Andrew, there was an episode of The Office, the American Office, where they did
Yeah.
like team building improv, and Michael Scott decided to like to keep shooting everybody so they couldn't talk. So, I mean, that's probably not the best way to do improv.
Yeah, definitely. And and why that didn't work is because he was really ignoring everyone else's ideas and just superseding his own, right? He was just shooting everyone in every scene or telling them he had a gun and he was going to shoot them, right? And I think we accidentally are Michael Scott in the office often, right? When I was talking about
Mm.
like if we're a team manager, even just a teammate, we might be accidentally shooting down our colleagues' ideas without realizing that's what we're doing, right? So when a friend says like, like I know we always do like just like happy hour after work, but like I was thinking like, could we do karaoke this week? And if your response is immediately like, nah, some people don't like to sing, we're not doing that. Not only does it like shut down the karaoke idea, but it shuts down that person from like wanting to share their other ideas,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So to shift to a mindset of saying like, oh, let me not shoot down that idea right away. Let me not be Michael Scott. Let me hear that out and say karaoke. Okay. Yeah, like what could that look like? Like, is there a place you've been to? Like you could just start to explore it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but to notice your instinct to shoot down ideas like Michael Scott and try to shift to say, what if that worked is a big one. A game I love to play that's really simple is just called band names. Band names, right? So we all have bands that we love. And the names kind of matter, but they kind of don't, right? Like, would
Hmm.
we all not love the Beatles if they were called the Turtles? I
Right.
think we would still like them, or if they were the Bears. Um, and so the game of band names is just with a partner or with a small group, just taking turns making up band names. And you can just look around the room. I always tell people if you don't have an idea, just look around the room for improv suggestion. The light bulbs,
Hmm.
the soda. And the other people are just going to say, I love that. And the reason is just to notice how quickly we judge an idea, even if it doesn't matter, right? Like, Joe, even if you and I are making a band, we're not really musicians. We're not really, maybe you are, I don't know, but we're not really making a band. But if I suggest a name like the Dolphins, your brain might instantly say, oh, that's a good name for a band or that's a bad name for a band. And so it's just starting to notice how quickly we can shut down an idea, even when it doesn't matter, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And to try to just pause that instinct and like evaluate it more, because I think it happens with ideas big and small at companies, and we don't even realize we're doing it. That when people suggest an idea, our instinct is to like jump on it or be like, no, that's not going to work. Yeah.
Hmm. I heard you say that you had people come to you and say that the meetings were unproductive and long, and people couldn't interject. People like to go and just hear themselves talk, and you kind of took it upon yourself to try to kind of smash that up a little bit and introduce improv.
Yeah. So I designed a program we do called the Better Meetings Workshop, which is kind of a 3-step workshop on that. And it's really to say that meetings should be the best part of our day, not the worst part of our day.
Hmm.
And so many friends have told me that they'll say, Andrew, I had meetings all day yesterday. I got nothing done. And I said, yeah, but during the meetings, like surely you did something interesting. They're like, no, I was kind of zoned out and checking my email. And so thinking about how important meetings are as setting the tone for our team, setting the tone for our gatherings together, and how they can be the best part of our day. So, what improv brings to us is inviting people to participate. I think that's the number one thing for me is your meeting
Hmm.
participatory? Is everyone invited to participate? Are we hearing everyone's voice? Or is it really taking turns presenting? Or even worse, which happens often, one person presenting. My sister worked for an organization, and she would talk about how her boss would have an hour meeting with her. And for the whole hour, he would just be monologuing. And then in the last 3 minutes, she would say, wait, we got to get something done. Right. So we joked that he basically just had this like solo podcast and they just happened to be there and weren't even part of the conversation. And so I think challenging yourself to incorporate participation, incorporate movement as well. So with improv, we often just get up and moving. Like a really simple thing you can do is I call it like just the nose barometer. So this works on online or in person. When someone's sharing an idea without even speaking, you can kind of raise or lower your nose to let people know like how much you're loving this idea, you're into it. So
Hmm.
if we're, you and I are on video here right now, if I like raise my nose all the way to the top of my screen, that's like, Joe, I'm obsessed with that idea. That's
Mm,
amazing.
mm.
If I lower it, I'm like, I'm confused or I'm a little lost. I'm not sure what's going on. So it's a way to invite participation and feedback without even speaking, without even interrupting
Nonverbal.
someone's flow or demanding someone like explain it. You're just saying like, oh, I love that. I can't explain it, but I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. What is the responsibility in improv of the person listening?
So I think the responsibility when you're listening in improv is to think about what's happening and how can you contribute? How can you build? How can you add on to it? A metaphor that one of my teachers had for what improv is that you're trying to go for a walk and you're walking on quicksand, and every time you give one helpful piece of information or you help the scene, it's a little brick you put down on the ground and you
Hmm.
start to build your path. And if any of you stop trying to build the path, you're going to fall into the quicksand. And in the same way, in our organizations and in our meetings
Hmm.
especially, if you thought about it as if we zone out, if people stop participating, if they stop helping, we're going to fall into quicksand. We need everyone to be jumping in. So we help people design meetings and think about incorporating movement, incorporating participation throughout the meeting. And sometimes it's just as simple as when you notice the energy lagging, don't just like push through, pause for like 2 minutes and play a game, and then come back, and you're going to come back with more energy and you're going to be more productive. So we really help show people that setting some time to focus on energy, to focus on participation will make your meeting more productive, not less productive.
Hmm. So the benefits of improv overall, just the pure benefits, Andrew, are bringing people together. Finish my thought. What are the benefits?
Yeah, so we like to say it's definitely like stronger teams, happier
Mm,
people. That's how we try and summarize it. In the workplace, we see that companies tell us that employee retention is really helped by the satisfaction of employees and the satisfaction of teams.
hmm,
So being able to have teams that work well together, trust each other, work and play together really leads to employee retention. And we see it in the surveys that we give to people where 97% of people that bring us for programs are really happy that they did. And they sometimes say it's because of specific tools that they have. And sometimes it's the building of trust on their team so that they can really, go further and build more together. I think we just often skip over the trust building of the team. We skip over the team unity and we just want to jump straight into the work. And when we do that, we just set ourselves up for failure, right? When we skip steps towards building a strong team, we set ourselves up for failure. And in the same way, when we do improv, when we make our meetings impactful and purposeful and fun, people really show up wanting to participate, participating and helping the team, helping the organization.
and what are the cons?
Well, the cons to improv. People
People take
are,
it too far?
people can, I think the cons are in some ways good to me in the sense that people demand to want to be a part of the team and want to participate. And so I think the
Mm,
cons are if you don't want a team that thinks for themselves, that gets creative, that does more, for you as a boss, it's not going to be ideal, right?
mm,
Because you're going to have a team that's unsatisfied with feeling like ants getting their marching orders, right? And going back to that, um I think that can be the downside to it. And I think if people only do improv and forget about setting their goals, that can be the other downside, right? We're not saying that the point of your meeting should be to do improv, right? Or that the point of your meeting should be to goof around together for an hour. We're saying if you allow that space to play, to goof around together during 5 or 10 minutes of that meeting, the time that you spend trying to tackle big problems will actually be more effective and more efficient. So
Mm.
I think if you overlearn a lesson, right? Like everything has to come in moderation, right? It's not that, we should only eat carrots all the time and never eat a donut. It's that we have to find a balance. And so I think finding that balance is important. And so sometimes people just say we can never do anything fun in our meetings because we're too busy and there's no value to that. And conversely, of course, if you said, we're going to meet for 2 hours every week to play improv games, everyone would be frustrated with that too, because they would be saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got to get a lot done. So
Mm.
it's finding that balance, but we help people find that balance. And truthfully, Joe, like it's very few people have too much fun at work or have too few meetings or too much
Mm.
play. So that would be a very happy problem if people started doing improv so much that they were, like falling behind on their work. I haven't seen it happen yet. So
Hmm.
I'm not too worried about it yet. Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew, what are some lessons that you've learned through improv? Because you're introduced to this, you go to school. I mean, yeah, I know you have kids and you've got great photos of them and everything, and the social media. It's wonderful, but are you able to like kind of transfer it to regular life, to personal life?
Absolutely. I mean, I have two boys. I have a 3-year-old Miller and a 1-year-old Oren, and that's definitely my newest hardest job of my life in the last few
Mm,
years.
mm,
And I do only half joke with my wife that all of my improv training in the last 15 years has been building to being a
huh,
dad.
huh.
Because, you know, toddlers and babies really are so willing to play and also need so much play. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times it comes into practice. So last night, for instance, trying to get my son to get to bath time, he often does not want to get to bath time, even though he loves it once he's there. So we've started making silly ways to carry him there. So I now always carry him as like a sack of potatoes, or I throw him over my shoulder. But he's gotten bored with that. So now I offer him different things. I'm like, do you want to be a sack of grapes, a sack of carrots, a sack of cupcakes? And 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 then he'll say, yeah, sack of cupcakes. And then I like throw him over and bring him to the bath. So being able to be in the moment, not be afraid to be silly and have those silly ideas, I think is so valuable for parenting. And kids in general, my own kids, but also other kids, are just so in the moment in a way that's beautiful, but also exhausting for adults sometimes, right?
Mm,
Like,
mm,
sometimes adults can handle the idea of like, oh, tomorrow we're going to go to the park. But for
mm,
kids, that's really tough to process of saying something's going to happen tomorrow or next week. So kids really are just so in the moment that to to be able to be a great listener, to listen to what they're really saying, to be in the moment. And I think the deep listening of improv is not just hearing what people are saying, but trying to really understand their emotions. Like they're saying, I don't want to eat anything, but what I'm really hearing is that they're exhausted, that they're tired, right? And
mm,
they need to nap.
mm,
And the same way with adults, we often don't say what we mean, right? We'll say like, why didn't you clean the dishes? But what we really mean is like, I am so frustrated with my work. I'm like boiling over, right? And we're
hmm,
not saying we're a thing. So I think with improv, it's really about noticing more and listening in a deeper way, um, which I think can be like such a great exercise to practice. Like one acting exercise that anybody can do who's listening to this walking down the street that I think is fun is just to try and notice someone else's walk, their gait, and try and walk like them, just like
hmm,
mirror them. One
hmm,
of the greatest ways to practice improv is just with like mirroring. So notice how they walk, how you feel in their walk. Does it make you feel more tired, more energized, more like you, less like you? Does it make you angry or upset? And in the same, when you're doing improv or in a meeting context, if you're not sure what to come next, mirroring is not a bad way to go, right?
hmm,
Like if you're talking with um, a client and they tend to have short, quick sentences, you might want to just keep your thoughts briefer
hmm,
than you do normally, right? Or if there's someone that likes to go on tangents and talk about something else, follow them on that tangent. If they start talking about baseball, that's not what you were planning on talking about, just follow them there and see where it goes. It's so powerful, for both for comedy and for life to mirror. When I was studying improv, like one of my teachers, Tara Copeland, who I love and is doing amazing things in LA now, she would say that if you step into a scene, you don't know what to do, just mirror the other person's energy, mirror their character.
Hmm.
And when you think about like Saturday Night Live or Key and Peele or whatever your favorite sketches of choice, think of how many great sketches are just two people acting the same. Because it's just so funny to watch two human beings kind of being the same. But in the same way, in our lives, just really listening and mirroring people is almost always just a great way to go. And another thing, being a parent that kids are great at is just mirroring playing all the time. So yeah, I love that.
Eh, Is improv introduced to most parts of your life, Andrew? Is it, our conversation of it? Is there a percentage of it that's actually improv?
Yeah, I mean, I think it informs, everything that I do and try to practice. I think improv, like anything else, is like a muscle that you need to keep practicing so it can get rusty and
Hmm.
it can go out. But I think our conversation, I'm definitely thinking about, how can I serve you, right? How can I serve this podcast? Not about like what do I need, but
Hmm.
like what would be helpful to Joe? What might be helpful for his listeners? Like how could we help this conversation? So it's forced you to ask those questions. It also makes me less afraid to try ideas, to share something, to share a tangent that comes to mind, write a story, because I know that we can always, see where that goes or go from there. I think improv is freeing because you realize that we're having this conversation now. There's 1,000 different conversations we could have, and they all have value. So don't worry about the conversations we're not having. Just be in this conversation, the one that we're having right now.
Yeah, be present. I heard you say that one of your early inspirations, Monty Python.
Oh yeah. Monty Python was game changing for me. I think I was introduced in fifth or sixth grade when I was a kid, and we rented Monty Python and the Holy Grail, one of their three movies and one of their masterpieces. And I think what they really unlocked for me is the ability to both be silly and ridiculous and intellectual and clever and brilliant at the same time, right?
Hmm.
So they understand that there's a whole part of the Holy Grail that is literally just a knight getting his legs and arms chopped off and saying it's just a flesh wound, like ignoring it, not worrying about it. It's just really silly, over the top, ridiculous. And then there's also a sort of communist peasant arguing with King Arthur about why the monarchy doesn't make any sense, right? And so for me, it was so liberating to say, you don't have to choose in life or in comedy to be intellectual or silly. You don't have to choose to be like physical and ridiculous or be brilliant and smart. You
Hmm.
can do both. And for me, they still are kind of the pinnacle of that. But I really strive to see both sides of that and embrace both sides of ourselves, which I think we all have. I think some people are good at embracing the intellectual side, but have a harder time just letting loose. And some people are great at, playing quarters with their friends and like going crazy and partying, but have a harder time like letting themselves like dive deep intellectually. So it's like embracing both those sides of ourselves. I think
Hmm.
they do really well. And I love, yeah.
Hey, Joey Pinz here. Want to take your podcast experience to the next level? I'm excited to invite you to become a YouTube member. It's the absolute best way to support the channel and enhance your connection. Join our amazing community and unlock the incredible perks, custom loyalty badges, exclusive emojis, and priority comment replies. Your voice will always stand out. Be the first to watch new videos with early access, receive special membership shoutouts, and get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and updates. Dive into content available only to our members, special videos, deep dives, and insider perspectives. Engage directly with me. Suggest podcast topics you want to hear, and even get personalized video shoutouts. Hit the join button right now and become part of something special. Let's build this amazing community together. I can't wait to welcome you as a new member. Join the Joey Pinz family today. Yeah, it's amazing how silly but yet kind of intellectual they could be at the same time. It's very, very interesting how they draw that line. And So are you more of a Three Stooges or Marx Brothers?
Oh, it's choosing your children is tough.
Right. Wow. So I can go.
It's funny. I do a walking tour in Philadelphia. I actually did one yesterday where I play different characters called characters, and I play Larry Fine, who was one of the Three Stooges. Grew up in Philadelphia, and I really love them. I mean, I really grew up with Marx Brothers more because I think they have that intellectual and physical comedy side. I think the Three Stooges are so much physical comedy that
Yes.
I love it, but not in the same sustained way. I think the Marx Brothers were brilliant at the puns, and just yeah, just great. But I learned so much from both,
Mm,
and they were really like masters of the stage that also put it on film. But yeah, learned a lot from them, and I think both of them, as well as like Charlie Chaplin and a lot of performers like that, really understood how incredibly hard and brilliant it was to do physical comedy. And
mm,
unfortunately, that's not appreciated enough. Like I always say to friends, I want a comedy to win Best Picture. I
right.
wanted Bridesmaids to win Best Picture that year. I wanted like Ace Ventura Pet Detective to win Best
Ha!
Picture. But it doesn't get the respect sometimes because people
No.
see comedy as easier than drama. But I'm like, it's so much harder because you have to be real while being ridiculous and insane. And Honora, the Best Picture this year, I don't know if you've seen it, Joe.
Yes.
Um, it definitely has serious elements to it, and the ending is very thoughtful and serious. So I don't think anyone would describe it as a comedy. And I would say it has 100 laugh out loud moments and so much comedy and great characters in it that really propel the story that I think makes it such a brilliant act of storytelling that you're tackling a very kind of serious subject and moments of danger and threat, but there's comedy interwoven through it, and that's
Mm.
that's my favorite kind of art. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Goodfellas is a very funny movie. I would say it's quite serious. There's killing it, but there's just such funny parts. Yeah, I think
Right.
great art needs to have both. So is there any modern day Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, Monty Python?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people doing great things. I mean, like Key and Peele, I think are
Sure.
modern, brilliant comedians, and some of their sketches are really, um, yeah, like intellectual and very much about wordplay and things, and some of them are just
Mhm.
very physical. I mean, you know, a comedian who I think is doing brilliant things right now is not physical comedy, but is Josh Johnson, who
Mhm.
some people might know from The Daily Show. He's occasionally on there, but he's a stand-up comedian, and he's really like riffing on the news in a long form way that is kind of like unprecedented. So I'm really
Hmm.
finding him to be really inspiring right now. And with the ability of, YouTube and different platforms to kind of put your voice out there, he's basically putting out a new comedy special every week, which is crazy. But it's really inspiring to me in his fearlessness that way. And and there's so much amazing improv going on. I really like encourage anyone to, if you're listening to this, to Google and find some improv in your town because there's just great performers creating great things. And the magic of seeing improv live is that it's a show just for you. It only
Hmm.
exists in that moment, and the memory might stick with you. I still remember jokes from improv shows I saw years ago. I remember a song that people improvised called "Man Up, Abe Lincoln, Man Up," and it was all this like Abe Lincoln and Mary Todd coming back to life, and Mary Todd was encouraging him. It was crazy. It doesn't make any sense, but it just
Mm.
stuck with me. It was so brilliant, and I think that's the magic of improv is being able to come up with that, and it just exists for that moment, and then you kind of let it go. And I think as you're asking about like what life lessons I take from improv, that's a big one of them too. Is just that everything we do in our lives, the best day, the worst day, they're going to go. We're going to let it go. So if you can just like learn to practice not being too attached to things, to stuff, to moments, to just like let them happen and let them go, it just really is liberating.
So you mentioned characters. So you're Larry Fine, incredible actor, comedian from the Three Stooges, and you're playing that character. So when you improv, you still have to be that character. So now your improv isn't restrained, but it's just a little bit different because you're trying to improv what he would do. How do you wrestle with that?
Yeah, it's a fun challenge. So we play real historical characters. So I play him. I play a boxer who is a featherweight champion from Philadelphia named Benny Bass. And it's really finding the voice, finding the physicality, And for each of those, I have a scripted scene. So there is an element of a script to it.
I
But
say.
then I improvise with people. I always ask for questions and participation. And that's really a fun challenge. It's really fun to think about what would this person do next. And that's a lot of improv as well, is you're usually not playing yourself. And one of the liberating parts, I think, for people about theater and improv is you're not restricted to be yourself. You can be in a scene and be playing the opposite gender. You can be playing an old person if you're young,
Hmm.
or a kid if you're old. Um, and so it's fun. So as Larry Fine, I kind of raise my voice like this, and he kind of moves around a lot, and he kind of is very friendly, but he's kind of touchy with people. So he kind of jumps on people and gives them a hug because he's very physical. And he bonks himself on the head a lot and hurts himself. So it's just finding the different voice and asking yourself how that person would react is a fun part of acting and improv. That makes it so fun. Yeah.
So I mean, people know Larry Fine, know his story generally speaking, but when you say you're that boxer and nobody knows his story, do you have to like kind of explain it through the improv and through your scenes who this person is?
Yeah, so I share a little bit about them kind of towards the end. And like Larry Fine, a lot of people don't know, grew up in Philadelphia. The interesting part of Larry Fine's story to me was that as a kid, his parents had a jewelry store, and he went one day to drink acid that they used to like measure gold. And he went to go sip the acid, and his father knocked it out of his hand, and it burned his arm really badly.
Oh,
And his parents realized that he had to use that arm more because it got burnt, and so they bought him a violin. And that's really what set him on the path of performing, was playing a violin at this early age, and he
interesting.
became great. And in some of the Three Stooges movies, you can see the violin.
Hmm.
But yeah, for other stories like Benny Bass, who's totally unknown, yeah, I'll tell the stories of his matches. I'll tell about where he came from, and nobody's whole life, because for any of us to summarize our whole lives would be too much. But really, for him, just sharing a couple of key moments in his life, like the fact that he started his amateur boxing career when he was 12 years old, and he won 95 out of 100 matches at that time,
Hmm.
and how he won his championship boxing match was he and another boxer named Red Chapman both swung a right hook and hit each other at the same time, and both went down.
Hmm.
And he just kind of got up faster and ended up winning in the decision. So it's drawing the scene, painting the picture, and really trying to show rather than tell. That's the important thing. Yeah.
But Andrew, you've got, one of the greatest boxers of all time, certainly in movie history right there in Philadelphia. I would figure why you'd gravitate towards Rocky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's we do mention Rocky. I make a couple of jokes about Rocky and being the
I say.
champion and the art
I
museum
say.
steps. That particular tour is about kind of the history of the Jewish community in Philadelphia. So it's four different Jewish characters, and Benny Bass was actually predated Rocky and was the first like world champion boxer from Philadelphia. He was a
I
featherweight. He was
say.
5'1",
Uh,
really little guy.
oh,
But
so he's
his
real.
He's a real guy. Yeah, yeah. These are real
Oh,
guys.
I
Yeah, he's
thought
a
you
real
made him
historical
up.
character.
Oh, I thought you
No,
made him.
no, no.
Wow.
He's a real historical
Oh, oh,
character. His uh,
oh.
his given name was Benjamin Baruch, but his boxing name was Benny Bass. Yeah, yeah, real story, real story. Yeah.
And you also co-founded the Bible Players.
Yeah. So the Bible Players is a Jewish comedy team I started about 12 years ago. And our goal is really to use improv and comedy as a way to explore Jewish values and Jewish stories. So we
Hmm.
visit schools, camps, and synagogues and really bring biblical stories to life, bring Jewish holidays to life through theater, through plays. And our form of improv, which we call mitzprov, in Judaism, we have the idea of mitzvot, which are kind of like Jewish values or commandments. And we really help people to think about how improv can be a way to practice mitzvot, to practice how we treat each other. Like one Jewish value we talk about a lot is like kavod, is respect. And so respect is a great idea in the abstract, but how do you actually show respect in the moment? And so for
Hmm.
us, playing improv together, listening to people's ideas, building together, supporting each other is really putting it into action, because I think a lot of our values can be abstract. Sometimes both with the Bible Players and with Artly Working, I talk about kind of like the intangibles, right? Sometimes people say soft skills, and I say improv can make the intangibles tangible, right?
Hmm.
It takes something from being an abstract idea of like, how do we work as a team? How do we build trust? How do we show respect? And it makes it very tangible in the moment through a game, because it's very clear in a game, oh, we trust each other or we don't, or we can work great together as a team, or we're not there yet. So it's, yeah, a lot of that.
Hmm. What's next? I know you're writing a book, But I mean, you just love this. The passion in it. It's just so natural for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really have always loved comedy, and when I learned about improv, it really was life changing for me. And so my dream in life, if I can wave a magic wand, is for everyone to have kind of the tools of improv to better themselves, to help their lives, to be more of themselves, to find their dreams. So, as you said, I'm working on a book this year called Participate. That's really the goal is to help people think about how they can participate more in their own lives, in what they want and what they want to see, and then how they can help in the communities that they lead, how they can make things more participatory. If there's someone that hosts a dinner, how can they make that more participatory? If they lead a team at work, if they volunteer in their neighborhood, how can they help people to participate more? So that's a big project. I'm working with my friend Jody Goldberg on a training that we're doing on facilitation and how to help people facilitate better at their nonprofit organization specifically. So I'm really excited about that. And always working on new things and writing new things. I'm, you know, creating a lot with parenting and thinking about how can I help other parents to see the value of the tools of improv and the games that I love to play. So if I can find the time for that, that's next too.
Mm. Old couple has been married for 50 years, and she yells downstairs and says, "Harold, come up here and make love to me." And he says, "Okay, but I can't do both." So when you hear these kinds of jokes have been around, especially in the Jewish community for so long,
Yeah.
I mean, you have them all kind of locked and ready to go, and you introduce them during your improv?
Well, I love those kinds of jokes, and in improv, I try to turn off that knowledge a little bit and really be in the moment
Ah,
and really have it fit right, and because a group can really feel if you're trying to kind of like shoehorn a joke in
mm,
there. But let's say you naturally end up doing a scene and you end up being pirates. If you can incorporate a pirate joke that like what's a
mm.
pirate's favorite letter? You think it's R, but it be the C, right? Like if you can naturally
Nice.
incorporate that, like that's great. But for the most part, we try and separate that a little bit. But sometimes there's a bit of both. So for instance, like we have a bit in our Bible player show that we do for adults that's called like kosher sex positions, which are really kind of Jewish jokes disguised as sex jokes. Like it's
Yes.
these two old guys and they're exchanging things and they're like, what about Morty? Have you ever tried the matzah? Oh, what's that? It's where you both lie flat. No matter what you try, nothing rises. And so we have jokes that we've written for that, but then we also improvise. So we'll ask the audience, like, do you just tell us the name and we'll come up with what it is. So they
That's
can say the gefilte fish, and then we have to make up what that could be. So
mm.
I love both improv and comedy writing, and we also have a bit that we have like old dirty jokes like that we'll bring around to the crowd, and we have people in the crowd perform them. So it's all about performing a one liner that's already written. Like what's one I love? Like Harold and his wife Joan are sitting in bed, and um, first Harold reaches his hand on Joan's arm, says, "Oh," and then his hand goes down to her stomach, and she says, "Oh," and then suddenly stops, and she says, "What, Harold? Why did you stop?" And he says, "I found the remote." So it's just like silly jokes like that, but that I love, and we'll invite audience members to just read them to perform them, so that it's like a shared joke, but we all have our own personalities and our own way that we would share. So I love that history as well. A
Wonderful.
proud part of that
Yes.
history. Yeah.
Of course, of course. Andrew, has there been anything in the last month or so you changed your mind on?
What have I changed my mind on recently? Um, well, I mean, something I'm getting into is reading some science fiction. So that's kind of a new
Mm,
interest. I wasn't anti
mm.
science fiction before, but I'm kind of coming around to it. I'm thinking about what I've changed my mind on recently. Hmm. I don't know. Got to think about that. It feels it feels full of myself to say I haven't changed my mind about anything, but nothing's coming to mind at the moment. Yeah.
I'll give you a moment, but I'll tell. So I started my. You're from Philly. I'm from New Haven.
Yeah.
Northeast. We both say sneakers. Everybody else says tennis shoes in this country. I think
Mm.
it's Philly and up. Anything kind of below and west of that, say tennis shoes. I mean, to this day, I'm in Florida now,
Funny.
and people say, I put on my tennis shoes. I say, oh, we're gonna go play tennis. But anyway,
Oh, funny.
so I don't know. Just my simple observation.
Yeah, yeah.
Started my business in the 90s and I was working way too hard and uh you know putting my health in the back seat, and next thing I know, in front of the doctor, I'm 340 pounds. And yeah, she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So I changed everything I did, and I was upset with myself. It's about my family, So 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. So when I tell this story, people ask how, and I say discipline. I wonder, Andrew, in your such fascinating life, very different than mine, very cool. How does discipline play a role in your life?
Yeah, I think discipline for me is really about working back from the ending and setting goals for myself. And
Hmm.
so I feel like the main reason I've been able to do the things that I've done is by kind of promising something and then making it happen. Sometimes externally, sometimes internally. But the first sketch comedy group that I started right after college, with one of my best friends, Dan, we walked into this comedy club that we love called Rafifi in New York. It's no longer there. And we would see comedy shows there. We loved them. And we said, hey, we have a sketch comedy team. Could we have a slot to perform? And they said, yeah, 3 weeks on Thursday night, you guys can
Hmm.
have that slot. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, great. And then I went back to my friends and I said, guys, we have a time. We got to start writing sketches. And for me, that is really like the magic. That's one of the magic things that I
Hmm.
feel like
Hmm.
is to have a clear goal, a clear deadline for ourselves. Because as human beings, we are just great at procrastinating, and it's
Hmm.
just inevitable. And I'm one of the best of them. And so the only way that I really find that discipline and get things done is by having the end goal and then working backwards and saying, okay, if I'm going to perform in 3 weeks, I want the rough draft in 2 weeks, right? So I can tweak it. So then if I want the rough draft in 2 weeks, I got to write something this week.
Hmm.
But I think it's like that external accountability. Um, or accountability with friends, like finding a partner. I mean, I'm amazed by folks that can do things alone. And for you, Joe, I don't know if your weight loss journey was something you really tackled by yourself, but for me, I feel like finding accountability partners, whether it's one friend or a group, is just the biggest way we can help ourselves. Like trying to
Hmm.
do things by ourselves, there's just almost never a reason to try to do things by ourselves. Like the challenges we face, other people are facing them right now. Other
Hmm.
people have faced them in the past. And so whether it's following a book and a method that someone else has laid out for you, or it's finding a best friend, I think that's so important. And all of my projects, the Bible Players and Characters and Artly Working, each of them is something I've co-founded with one very close friend who I have those ideas with. And I just think that's so important. So like that's my biggest advice to people who are struggling with discipline or thinking about it is don't try to do it by yourself. Like don't try and be
Hmm.
your own personal trainer, your own taskmaster, your own thing. Like ask yourself what support would help you. For different people, it might be an app, it might be a book, it might be a plan, it might be your life partner, it might be your family, it might be your friend. Um, but don't do it alone. You don't need to do it alone. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, there's this kind of incorrect cliche or generalization that the artist is kind of starving and they're undisciplined and they're I remember watching interviews with Benny Hill. I mean,
Mm.
here's a person who couldn't be sillier, right? I mean, he's slapping ball guys on, and he's like, it didn't really time very well, by the way, where we are today, but
Yeah.
it was just very but it's still funny at the time. And
Yeah.
but then when you saw him interviewed, I mean, he'd have tea and he was serious and there was no humor at all. It was just it seems to me that it's even more disciplined than even the serious actors, to me anyway.
Yeah, I know. I think as an artist, you need to find that discipline because it is an ongoing slog and it's hard. And I think
Mm,
for a lot of friends who have been actors and have decided to stop or not, I tell people it's making art is very hard, but really the hardest thing is that there's inevitably ups and downs. You know, even the most successful actors you can think of, they're still always looking for the next project,
Mm,
auditioning for the
mm,
next thing. It's never coasting, right? It's never like that. And I'm not implying that other professions are coasting, but there's an element of which, with a lot of jobs, you apply for the job, you get the job, and you're doing that certain thing. You have to keep doing that well, but you don't have to keep re-interviewing for your job. But as an actor, you're
mm,
constantly auditioning for your next job, right? For me, it's asking myself before every program, even before, every interview, right? Like I write down like notes of things like I might want to talk about, ideas,
mm,
um,
mm.
because I want this conversation or this program to be like the best it can be. And then after programs, I always have this framing of highlights and ebbies, which I love, which is what were the highlights, what was the best, and ebbies is like even better if it could be even better if I did this, right? And so I think that is part of the discipline too, is reminding ourselves that whatever we're good at or what we're bad at, we can always be better at it, right? So it would be even better if we did, something a little bit different. Or how could we be better? Yeah.
Yeah, because even the deadpan, like Will Ferrell, for example. I mean, the way that a scene or something could be so funny, and he doesn't laugh, and he just keeps that. I mean, that is incredible discipline. Even like Laurel and Hardy. You
Yeah.
have the straight guy and Jerry Lewis and Dean. Dean there and Costello. You have the deadpan, and then you have the it's just so necessary. And you think one's funny, but the person who's doing the deadpan is just as funny because they're just carrying it. I just think of some of those scenes with Will Ferrell, but then you have somebody like Jimmy Fallon who can't hold it. He just breaks on everything, and it's still very funny. I know that my point is there's so many flavors, and
Yeah.
discipline is all a part of it.
Yeah. And I think you find your own voice, right? And like all those comedians are very different, even as they're all excelling in the field. And I think a lot of comedy and improv, but I think in a lot of workplaces as well, is finding your own voice and finding what works for you and,
Mm.
where you excel. There's this Jewish value that I think about a lot called hakarat hatov, which is like appreciating the good. And
Hmm.
I often feel like for myself and for other people that we spend too much of our mental focus and energy trying to fix the things about ourselves that we don't think are good, and not enough
Mm.
time celebrating the things about ourselves that we do like and are good and making them even
Mm.
better. Right.
Mm.
So, like, if I'm not a numbers person, right? Like, if looking at a spreadsheet is gibberish to me, if I want to, if I need to, obviously I can learn those skills. But if I don't, just say, that's okay. How can I get help with that part of my life? And I can do other things better. Like, none of us is going to be amazing at everything. So, can we appreciate what we're good at? Whether it's artistically, am I good at being the crazy man or the straight man? Or if it's like in the workplace, like, what am I great at? And how
Mm.
can I do more of that rather than worrying about, like, I'm not great at this part? We can just be honest with other people, like, I'm not great at taking notes. Can somebody help me take notes? Like I'm terrible at that. I always mean to, I never do it.
Hmm.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
What motivates you, Andrew?
What motivates me? I think I think my Jewish values I think about a lot in the family that I was raised in, really caring about tikkun olam, like making the world a better place than it has been before.
Mm.
And wanting to put more joy, more goodness into the world, like really motivates me. Um, I think about the small and the big problems in the world, and I think they're all tackled by us working together and collaborating. So I think I'm motivated by the idea of helping people to unlock their collaborative side, to unlock their skills, um, and find that joy in themselves. And I'm motivated to um, to help people to follow their joy and follow their artistic selves. Like we call ourselves artly working because I genuinely believe that we are all artists, whether or not we see ourselves that way or we follow it. We are all artists in different domains. And I want
Mm.
everyone to be able to create the art that they want to create, whether it's a podcast or a book or doing a puzzle every weekend because you love it, or painting in your garage. Like we are all artists, and art feeds our souls. And so I want to make sure that like everyone sees that side of themselves and celebrates that side of themselves.
How your life? how you make decisions, how you go about your life, Andrew, I'm going to say is mostly art over science. So there are times where you would use science. What are those times that where you actually may use science over art?
Hmm. I I think I learn a lot from other people that are scientists and good
Mm,
scientists, and I
mm,
believe them. I mean, I think when thinking about the world, and I was talking to my friend who works on climate change research,
mm.
and what I say to him is like, I don't understand the climate science, but I trust that you do, and I believe
Right.
you, right? Because you're an expert in that field. So for me, it's recognizing expertise when it's there and trusting it. I think in our information age, we have a little bit too much of like I can be an expert in everything, or I can just do my own research and find my own answers. But that's not really true for everything because it is too much. So it's finding the people um, who do think that way. Even with some parts of the business that are harder for me, like how to price things, how to think about pricing and sales and structuring. I ask for help about those things. I ask for help with that.
Hmm.
I was talking to someone the other day about like, how does he think about charging for coaching in a corporate setting and other settings? Because that isn't my strong suit. Like, I joke with my partners, but I'm like, if you could guarantee me and my family shelter and food for the rest of my life, I'm happy to lead every improv program for free, forever, for everyone, all the
Mm,
time, right?
mm,
And I recognize that that's not the world we live in, right? And my son's college education is going to cost a fortune, so I need to, support that and make the money for that. And so it's finding that balance and finding help in those other areas. So, um, yeah, it's
hmm.
just it's I think it's recognizing my strong suits and my weak suits, so to speak.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Yeah, when I asked about motivation, you said, make the world a better place, your values. So given that motivation, Andrew, how do you measure success?
I measure success in sometimes in the big picture and sometimes in the moment. So in the moment, I really measure success in uh, the joy I see on people's faces, the smiles we get, the laughter they have together, the inside jokes of teams that work together and find new camaraderie amongst themselves. In the long term success, I measure it in um, folks bringing me back for other programs, seeing the value and what it brings to them, and in in the way I see them incorporating and using the tools that we shared. Like I was sharing the idea of Ebby's even better ifs, which is a tool I learned and I love to share. And yesterday I had a friend telling me they teach that now. They teach everyone to use that. At a Jewish summer camp we visited, we taught this game called Beastie Rap. That's a fun game, and we heard when we visited the next summer that's now like ubiquitous. Everyone's playing it all the
Hmm.
time. And so
Hmm.
that just brings me so much great joy that for me, if you share some of these tools and help people unlock this creativity and this side, that they then will just keep running with it. So I love that.
Hmm. Andrew, I love this perspective you bring. It's so different from what I know and practice, and it's refreshing. And I love what you're doing with businesses. I thank you so much for your time. Anybody watching or listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Then thank you so much for having me, Joe. They can email me, Andrew at artlyworking.com, ARTLY working.com, or go to our website, artlyworking.com/podcast. And we have a kind of discount there for a first program. If you're just hearing about us on Joe's podcast, we would love to work with you. And I can also talk to you there about the other programs with the Bible players and characters that we spoke about as well. But yeah, we just love to hear from folks and work together if this all sounds great to you.
Yeah, like you said, artlyworking.com. Very clever, by the way.
Thank
Instead
you.
of hardly working, you're artly working. Yeah.
Exactly.
And also LinkedIn, Artly Working. The Bible Players is on YouTube. Cool videos there. And then, of course, Facebook, Andrew Davies. Andrew, thank you so much. Next time I'm in the greater Philly, the current NFL world champions.
That's right. Go
Next time I'm
Birds.
in, yes, next time I'm in your area, we'll get a cup of tea.
That sounds great, Joe. Would love that. Would love that.
You be well.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.